That
That
was
was awesome.
so good. What I loved most is he picked a product and category that wasn't a pre-existing, like, known category like a CRM where it's like, here are the players, you know about them, and so it required a lot of buyer education, and the way he talked about what he did versus his SEO person did, I thought that was super cool.
Yeah, for a company that's 10 million ARR, he's got 11 people on his team to have such a clear distinction of like the CMO being involved in the buying process separate from the SEO buyer and lead. That's got to be pretty interesting for sellers to understand, right?
Right, and did the sellers that didn't win even know that was the case? Because to his point, he wasn't showing up to the sales calls. I would be really curious to know if they even knew that this path was happening. Sometimes we just don't ask. But everything he said was so brutally honest, and that's what I love the most. I wish we could do this for every deal we lose. Is like, why? What did you do? Where did I fall down? This is super
Totally.
cool.
And what I love, I think people will enjoy hearing about is he said that he didn't want to get involved with salespeople in the process, but
Yeah.
he was sold to, right? So whether he perceived himself being sold to or not, he went out and did an evaluation where he did not buy the product, the status quo product he originally thought he was going to because of a sales process, even if he didn't feel like he was being sold to.
Yes, and that I think is the best thing to hear out of that whole conversation. He went to the guy he knew because he trusted him, and he learned about the problem, the category, the space. That is still, to your point, that is still selling. It just didn't feel like a sales interaction when he was talking about, well, I didn't want to be pressured and I didn't want to have all these questions. It's like, oh, that they're both like they're both sales. It's just one is so much ickier than the other. Okay, that was so good.
The whole series is about exploring how people's buying decision takes place from like the moment something becomes necessary to a
So
final
amazing.
decision.
Especially if you're like, well, we can do that too. It's like, why didn't we know that before? That would be helpful.
I was like, what I wouldn't have given to have this back then.
That's exactly the type of stuff I was hoping to hear out of these interviews. So, so cool.
This is Buyer Truths, a research project about how tech buyers make decisions and what it means for how you sell.
My name is Jen Allen-Knuth from DemandJen with a J, and I'm here with my partner, Drew Giovannoli from Buried Winds.
All right, we're live. Well, great, Madhav. Thank you so much for being here. Do you mind kicking off and just introducing your role and the context around how you make decisions? So maybe the size of your team, how constrained are you when you're making these decisions? And then we'll get into a recent purchase from this past year.
Yeah, sure. So I run marketing at Storylane. We're a marketing team of 11 people right now. And yeah, I think like a lot of my goals are basically based on like revenue targets. So like my performance is driven on like, do we hit like certain revenue goals? So it's not like, MQLs or whatever. It's purely just SQLs and like opportunities created is what we're measured on. And also I think another fact is that we're a angel strap company. So just raised like a pre-seed round and there's no plans of any add-on funding. So these guys are operating like a bootstrap company. So there are actual constraints.
I want to ask you about the pain you were trying to solve, or think about a recent purchase you've made. And if you could tell us like what stemmed this need, what motivated you to go out and look for a solution?
Yeah, sure. I think so. We have sort of like a sales led 80% of our revenue and we've got a PLG portion. And I think for the sales led motion, we have sort of like a question about how do you hear about us from all prospects. And one thing we started seeing probably, I think like maybe the start of last year was like there was a lot of chat GPTs and Geminis and Perplexities showing up. And we had and it was a growing number, like to a point where I think 1 out of 5 demo requests were from LLMs. And nor were we investing in it, nor do we have any idea like how we're performing there. So it sort of became almost like a growing worry in my head that okay, we need to first figure out how do we, measure how we are performing in terms of showing up in LLMs, because a lot of like buyers are now asking questions in LLMs about okay, which vendor do I buy and whatever, right? And then how do we know where we stand with that data? And then is there any action that we can take and actually take action on it? So that was sort of like my decision process that, okay, this is what we need to do. So we first need to look out for a tool that could give us LLM visibility data. That was the first thing. And that actually led to the search for like all of these AEO, LM, SEO, GEO, there's different namings for it, the tools in that space.
Yeah. How did you go about searching for these tools? Did you turn to the LLM or did you go someplace else?
I actually didn't go to the LLM. It's funny because there were a few vendors in my mind that were already there. Like, one was sort of like an add-on for a vendor we are sort of using, so Ahrefs. They had a LLM product called Brand Radar. So we wanted to that was the first thing I went into. The existing tools could be sort of add-on tools. Just didn't want to go looking for a new tool because, you have built that trust with that vendor in the sense like I trust the data in Ahrefs. So if they have a product that can help with that, I'd really choose them. And then there was a couple of other products like Profound, which we eventually went with, and also Scrunch.ai. There's like a million tools in this space. And I think the way I got to know was mainly, through my LinkedIn feed and through in-person, conversations. So I think it wasn't like a one-off thing. Like it probably come up like 100 times, Profound and Scrunch. And these were the two tools that came up again and again. And so we looked at those, and then my SEO person also looked at a couple of like slightly lower end, cheaper tools as well, like to just evaluate a bunch of vendors, and it was all through like recommendations from people. I asked in Exit 5. Asked there's a CMO community called CMO Coffee Talks, which is hosted by 6 Sense. I asked there, and yeah, that's how I got my list of options.
Do you remember how many? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Do you remember how many were on that initial list between you and your SEO person on your team?
Like, how many vendors did the SEO person have?
And you, yeah, if you blended them together.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I had 3. He had maybe 6.
Overlap or totally separate?
I think in total we had about 6 vendors. 3 of mine, and then 3 were like mine, and 3 other vendors he was looking at. Yeah.
Cool. Go ahead, Joe.
No, I was going to have Jen lead us through a bit of the sales process, like those first early discovery calls and next. But you bring up an interesting point, Jen. Like, why did you look separately? Like, why did you take it upon yourself to look for separate tools? And you have an SEO person who's, I assume, responsible for the performance of SEO and AEO or GEO. How did that division of labor happen? Were you just interested and went after it, or why did you look?
It's an interesting one. I think it was just I also wanted to sort of see what's in the market, because it's kind of like a very it's not like you're looking for a best webinar software where like the requirements are pretty set, and like this is almost, in a sense, it's not just finding the tool, but also sort of building the next strategy on top of it. So I needed to be involved a little bit on like, okay, this is what the tools can provide, and this is what we can do with it. Because that question was missing. Like, what do we then do with the data, right? Because I didn't know how much data could we actually get, in the first place. And that was actually a struggle with a lot of the vendors we didn't going with. Like, we didn't end up going with was just couldn't get the data to actually take any action. So that's probably why I was a little involved.
Yeah, it's an interesting product category to pick, because to your point, it's not
Yeah.
like, which CRM do we go with? And there's years and years of document. I remember the first time I heard about Profound, it was in a LinkedIn post from someone at G2 who posted about it. And I didn't even understand the category. So it's a whole different type. So I'm pumped you picked this one. I think it's a fascinating one for us to explore.
This is Buyer Truths, a research project about how tech buyers make decisions and what it means for how you sell. We surveyed 172 software buyers across mid-market and enterprise about real decisions they made in the past year, and all of the data is ungated and free.
My name is Jen Allen-Knuth from DemandJen with a J, and I'm here with my partner, Drew Giovannoli from Buried Wins. After you've learned how buyers make decisions in 2026, let us help you win yours. If you're losing deals to competitors you should beat, Buried Wins will tell you why. They do win-loss interviews with buyers you lost, prospects who never even considered you, and even reach out to the former sellers of your competitors. Learn more at buriedwins.com.
And if you're losing to buyer status quo, DemandJen will train your team to earn executive attention in outbound, lead status quo busting discovery conversations, and drive consensus with larger buying committees. Check out demandgenwithaj.com.
So once you narrowed down that list to 6, what happened from there? Did you reach out to them? Were they reaching out to your team? Was it your SEO person? Was it you? Tell us about like what every salesperson wants to know. Like, how did you actually make that first interaction come to life?
The interaction with each of these vendors. All right. Okay. Yeah. So it was different from my perspective, because the vendors I went with, I actually knew I knew some of the people that worked there also, which also played some parts. For example, at Profound, there's this guy, Nick, who I've known for years. We've been chatting for a while. And at that time, he was leading marketing for them. I just knew him. So, in the sense, like, I just dropped him a message saying that, hey, we're considering Profound. Do you have any tips, any sort of use cases, playbooks, anything that you could share just to figure out, and then I told him my problem. And he was almost sort of like my hands on sort of peer-to-peer sales assistant through the entire journey. So I actually didn't talk to any salesperson. I was actually just interacting with him. Like my SEO guy was, talking to the salesperson and they were sort of telling them, hey, you should get a starter enterprise, all of that. But internally for me, I was just interacting with Nick. I didn't even actually talk to the salesperson there.
Mm.
So yeah, and I think that was quite helpful. And I think one of the reasons why we went with it, because it's just like very sort of peer-to-peer conversations happening. With Scrunch, I think it was again not somebody I know personally, but kind of I guess an acquaintance or I don't know how to put it. But Kevin sort of I think used to run marketing, and I used to see his LinkedIn posts, and I was like, okay, let's I think try it out. And I think they had like a self-serve motion, but then I think it was sort of I think you had to like go through a salesperson to sort of do that. So I actually didn't do the sales call with them because I didn't want to do the early sort of call. So my SEO person did the call, got the account set up, and then I sort of came in and started sort of evaluating from my eyes, and he was evaluating from his eyes. And Ahrefs brand radar was yeah, that was a simple one, right? It was just an add-on inside the product. I just went in, started the free trial and started paying. I think we paid for about 2 months to try it out and then took a decision. So again, in all three cases, I actually didn't interact with the salespeople initially.
This is going to seem like the most obvious question, but to sellers that are just starting off in sales, this I think will be really helpful. Why would you choose to go through someone you know versus a quote unquote proper sales channel? What do you like? What's the difference between having a conversation with a sales rep versus having a conversation with someone you know?
Okay, I want to be polite. So I think number one is I don't like when somebody is just clingy. you know,
This is all fair ground.
Yeah, so it's like I don't want the guilt of not responding to somebody sending me 10 emails and messages and all of those things. I've dealt through all of that, so I just want to skip past that bit. I think one is that just to sort of avoid the sales people and everything, and also like I wanted to do my own self evaluation. I didn't want any sort of bias from anywhere, and I think the most important word I would say was I was looking for an answer to a problem that we were facing, that we had these growing number of requests coming in from LLMs, and I needed to figure out the playbook for it. So naturally the first step I went was like, okay, let me just go to somebody who's in this space and ask like my business problems and then try to figure out a solution, right? And then they could totally understand, like 10 years in SEO, for both of us, like there's a very sort of shared deep understanding that a salesperson wouldn't know, right? So yeah, it was just a long chat on LinkedIn, and I felt that was probably the right decision as well on my end.
Did you go into this evaluation with the sense that you were going to pick Profound, or do you think that there was kind of equal starting spot with all the vendors? Maybe Ahrefs had a lead because they were an existing vendor. Like, how did you place them before you even talked to anybody? What would you have guessed?
Just FYI, by the way, I'm loving this interview. Really enjoying these questions.
So are we.
Yeah, it's a great sort of journalistic instinct from your review. But like, I think, yeah, so for my first choice was Ahrefs because it was an existing vendor, because I trust their data. And that was the one that I wanted to really go with. That and another tool that we also use parallelly called SEMrush. They also had an AEO. So we actually looked at that vendor as well. Those are the first two tools we tried even before Profound. Just FYI. Like Profound was like a separate conversation I had with Nick, which I was just asking about LLM playbooks. I wasn't even talking about Profound initially. It was just more around exchanging notes on what works. But yeah, Ahrefs and SEMrush we tried, and I think I quickly realized at that time that these tools had built the AEO functionality on top of their existing product, while tools like Profound and Scrunch and all of the others in the space were built from an AEO from scratch, right? So it was a very different sort of operating like workflow in the tool, right? And there were limitations in how Ahrefs and SEMrush were working. So I quickly was like, yeah, I don't think these are going to work for the data that we need.
What was the point though in the sales or not sales conversation, but engagement with the team when that switched? So if you thought maybe I'm going to go with, I won't call it status quo, but an existing vendor, what happened? What moment? Was it a demo, something you read, a peer review? Like what switched your mindset at what point did Profound take the lead in the sales evaluation?
Yeah, so I used to have my one-on-ones with my SEO person like bi-weekly, and then and I think we were like, again, this was an ongoing conversation. What's the playbook for AEO? What's the playbook for AEO? And then to the point where we came out like, okay, in the KPIs we need these 4 numbers. Okay, like, and the tool that gives us these 4 numbers or gets us the closest to these 4 numbers in terms of visibility would be the one that we'll choose. So then we went into Ahrefs, we went into SEMrush, and we realized that, I mean, I can tell you exactly what. So what we needed in the LLMs was we needed how much traffic are we actually getting, because it was very hard to piece together that report in Google Analytics. And, we needed the tool to take our Google Analytics and actually give us like, what's the LLM traffic? And then be able to drill it down to, I would say, like, to the level like, okay, which page is driving this and which prompt is driving this, and then also give us visibility on how we're doing in terms of our citation share. So citations, like when you ask for queries, there's like these citations that show up. And I want to see what was our citation share versus competitors in our space, demo automation, right? All of these things we were not able to get to in the simplest way or at all with Ahrefs and SEMrush. So immediately I felt like if I'm going to pay $800, $900 a month for a product, and if I'm not getting even close to this answer, I'm not going to buy these. So we immediately knew that, okay, these are not the products for us. Profound got us closest to it, right? So it had like sort of an integration with Google Analytics, which would actually give you the data. It gave us not to the prompt level, but some visibility there. And it gave us on a page level drill down. And then Scrunch gave us a very different sort of data. So it was just, the reason why Profound came was like what we wanted in terms of the data, it got us the closest.
Do you recall from the point at which you saw the, inbound demo citations referencing, I've heard about you from AI, to the point at which you just had that moment, like, wow, Profound is the one that's going to help. Do you recall like what period of time that was? Are we talking months, weeks? Like how long did it get you to get to that point?
Okay, so an interesting one was for Profound, we got sort of like a no end date trial of the enterprise version of their account because I knew Nick, right? So he basically set us up with an enterprise account, and there's no sort of like 14-day or 30-day or whatever. They're like, just try it out, see if you can get the right data, and then we'll talk. I'll connect you to sales and make that happen. And he also pre-configured our account, so basically took in all of the prompts, some assumptions about us. So when I actually went into the account, it was like fully set up, everything, all prompts, queries, everything, right? So the first thing that I saw when I opened Profound was that Storylane, is the number one cited source in LLMs across all demo automation vendors, and there was like 10 vendors, right? And when I saw that, I'm like, all right, this is super nice, okay. And then I saw, one of our competitors was also in there, and I could actually go in and I saw like the closest competitor that we have, and they were sort of like, like if let's say our citation share was 81%, they were like at 67%. I'm like, this is good data. Like, like this is awesome data that I can sort of work towards. So that's when I was just like, okay, this is not something any other tool. And the simplicity that they gave it, in the dashboard is the first thing, right? Like I was really impressed at that time.
And did you and your SEO person, were you in alignment that Profound was the right tool? Was there any point at which you two kind of had a different point of view on which path to take?
I think it was a very close competition between Scrunch and Profound. And I think my SEO person was leaning more towards Scrunch. But I think what at the end, the decision that I was pushing for was that I need something where we can drill down very deeply into the data, which was not possible in Scrunch, and be able to come up with next step actions we could take with our LLM SEO strategy, which again was only possible to Profound. Scrunch data was great, but I didn't know much that we could do with it in our strategy, right? So that's the reason why I was leaning towards Profound and why we finally went with them.
So if you were leaning towards measurement as a top weighting so you could take action, what was your SEO person leaning towards as their top?
Yeah, I think it was more, just remember. So I think for Scrunch, it was, I think it was all over LLM. So, okay, so the difference was that their data was more wide in the sense like it didn't just give us the where are we cited and for what prompts and all of that. It basically gave us, okay, like, here's where you're showing up on video and, on social and all of these other places. It was giving us brand mentions across all of those things. It was giving us a very sort of wide coverage ground, right? So, which is good to know that, okay, this is where we are showing up. But if I want to drill down deep into, all right, in the socials or like which particular social post was cited for which prompt and, all of that, like that level of data, which you can do actually with Ahrefs, right? But not with a brand data product, you can actually do to some extent with Profound. And that's why I was just like, yeah, like we need to go with that. That's why I was like, with Conjurers, it kept coming up again. Like, okay, sure, like all of this information is really impressive and great, but the next quarter, like, if I want my SEO person to report that, okay, our citation share went from 67% to 81%. There's no way to know that. Our LLM traffic went from, let's say, 5,000 visits to 8,000 visits. There's no way to know that. If I want to know, like, okay, what pages drove that and what actual like changes we can do to actually make it rank higher in the LLMs and actually get updated data. Scrunch can provide that. So for those reasons, I was just like, yeah, it's just going to be a waste of money.
And then when you decided on Profound, which means you decided not to move forward with the other two, I know you said your SEO person was the one communicating with the sales reps. Can you talk a little bit, to the extent that you know, around what happened there? So when you made the decision, was that communicated to those sales reps? And if so, what happened on their side from there?
I think so. So the funny thing is, I would say 3 out of the 6 vendors didn't even check in later on. So yeah, they lost the deal. They didn't even, I mean, when nothing happened, like there was no email from them. So I think that's kind of like self-explanatory. Nothing happened there. For the 2 that actually asked us that, okay, like what happened and this and that, right? Yeah, I think we were just nice to them, to be honest. Like nice in the sense like, hey, listen, for our own, use case and for our thing, like we just felt this was better. So like basically just gave the exact same information I told you, right? Like I needed something that I can take action on. And I know that, if I give this feedback, they'll come back that like, no, 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 you can't do that in our product and whatever. But I did the evaluation. I know that it works. So that's why I said more in like for our own unique circumstances and our own sort of setup and our own sort of goals in the next 3 6 months, right? Like Profound seemed like the better choice, and that's why we went with them.
Do you feel like what you gave, you said it was polite and honest, but do you feel like it was comprehensive? Like, do you think those teams would know truly why they lost the deal? Or, like you said, you're trying to somewhat avoid conflict and being followed up with by a salesperson from the very beginning?
I think I was to the people that I worked a lot more closely with. So like for me, Ahrefs, Crunch, and Profound were the 3 that I was more closely with, right? So the Ahrefs team, I was very detailed with the feedback. I'm like, listen, guys, like I would have gone with you all, but like, here's all of the issues. And if you fix these and you actually come out with something better, I actually gave them, a lot of like product level feedback, like because I know a lot of the folks in Ahrefs, so I know them. So I gave them like Loom video level feedback that, okay, these are the exact things because they asked us, they're like, okay, we get it. You chose Profound, right? But, if there's anything that you feel we could have done differently. So I gave them that feedback. With Scrunch, it wasn't as much because, again, it was less sort of, I didn't know that many people there. So it was just like a 1 email paragraph, I would say.
Yeah. Awesome.
Have any of them come back since to check in on how the rollout's going with Profound?
The other salespeople, like
Yeah.
Hrefs, or these. So Hrefs, I think gave us another, I think like a 3 months trial on, like a free trial on the Brand Radar product, which has actually become better, and I'm actually starting to use it. I still feel, yeah, Profound is better than the others. Yeah. So Hrefs is the only one that actually came back. None of the other vendors came back.
I think we have just to cover a couple more questions. One I really want to get in is pricing. So you said about $900 a month. Did you go into this with a budget? And regardless of that, how much did price make a difference in your final decision?
Pardon the interruption, but if you're enjoying this podcast, I think you're going to love the full research report where we surveyed 172 buyers to understand how software is evaluated and what it means for how you sell. These are all people who have formally evaluated at least one new vendor in the past year, made a purchase, and majority of them over $50K. Now, these people are half enterprise buyers, half mid-market buyers, also half technical and half business roles. We go into topics like what happens when there's an AI mandate to drive the deal, why do people stay with vendors that they know are worse than their existing solution, and what breaks a tie when there are two finalists neck and neck. I'd love for you to check it out. You can visit buyertruths.com. Now back to the pod.
Yeah, it's funny. Initially, I was pretty surprised with the pricing because, I mean, usually SEO tools are not more than $100, $150 per seat per month, right? Like it's never beyond that. But LLM tools are crazy. Like, I mean, there's no upper limit. There's no like, and then there's competitors that are also selling it at like $5, $10, $15, right? But again, but I think in here, like for me, like I think the bigger priority was like the data quality. Like I just needed to get deeper level quality, and I just wanted to trust the data. That was number one. That's why the first instinct was to go to Hrefs, and then the second instinct was to go to the next vendor that probably had the highest quality data, right? So yeah, for that it was here the price point wasn't that much of a factor. I would say like if it was like crazy expensive, like I'm spending 30, 40K to get this deal, then sure, it might have required a little bit more convincing. But for I think under $1,000 a month, this was like, I just spoke to my CEO once. He's like, listen, right now the more important bit is like we just get clarity on the LLM, like why are we doing the way we are doing and what can we do to improve it? Because the impact of the pipeline on this was much bigger because the conversions from these LLM queries are like really high compared to like a regular blog traffic. So for me, the pipeline impact is much, much, much bigger. Be worried about the pricing here.
Madhav, thanks so much. Jen, do you have any other questions you think a seller would die to know from someone like Madhav?
No, this was fantastic. I loved you were just so honest. And I think that's what we crave. At least good sellers crave honesty. So thank you sincerely. This was a really great window into how you make decisions.
That's so sweet of you. Yeah, I appreciate it. And like I said, I love the questions. I might just binge watch. I don't know if you have this live already on Apple Podcasts, the episodes, or there's a date when these go live. But yeah, I would love to subscribe to these. Yeah.
Let me know. All right. Bye,
All
guys.
right, man. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jen. Thank you, Jen.
Pardon the interruption, but if there's one cause I love even more than helping sellers win, it's helping rescue dogs like Chungus find a home. Many Paws Global Rescue is located in Palatine, Illinois, and takes in rescue dogs of all shapes, even as thick as this, and sizes. If you're looking for a new pup to sit under your desk and help you win deals, visit manypawsglobalrescue.org.